Good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday, March 28th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting at 5:30. We will be, actually it's at 5:35. We will be tonight working on the proposed budget for the 23-24 school year. So I will, at this moment, turn it over to Andrea.
Would you like to first have board members introduce themselves
gives
for
you a few
members
more
of the public?
Sure. So we'll begin by, see, here we go again. We're not in the cheap seats, Alyssa. We're in the good seats.
That's right.
We'll start with Jim.
I'm Jim Lothridge.
Diane Potter,
Alyssa Tracy.
Megan Carlson,
Becky Fless.
Tony Veet.
Chris McGlone.
Jack Bitteroff.
Administrative staff.
Pat Hopkins, superintendent.
Andrea Dish, business manager.
Nate Stubber, athletic director.
Chad Kempton, high school principal.
Gabe Dostie, director of operations.
Vicky Dugay, principal of Riverview Community School.
Karen Moody, principal of Laura Richard School.
Katie Gould, principal at Helen Thompson School.
Nicole Barton, assistant principal at Helen Thompson School. Lauren Arnold, new high school principal next year. Alicia Morris, director of special services.
Terry McGuire, director of technology.
How did that feel to say, Lauren? Good. Yay. Excellent. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the discussion of the 2024 requested budget.
So in your packets, you should have an updated expenditure article list. According, in comparison to the last budget, we're still up 2.2 million or 7.83% from the current year budget. I have also provided to you where cuts have been made to date. So you have an updated increase overview sheet with updated figures to show approximately what makes up those budgets. So since the last time that we met, we received our high on health insurance. So the high for next year is 6%. So as a result, we were able to take 2% or $76,000 off the current or the budget in progress. And there were other changes that were made in addition to things having to do with contract negotiations and cuts that administrators and the superintendent have made. So this is where we are at. The next sheet that I would share with you would be the budget worksheet. But at 4:30 this afternoon, we received wonderful news. So the wonderful news that we received is that there was an algorithm error on the ED279.
Oh, yeah.
An error that actually works in our favor. So I am going to, and I did. So I'm going to ask Jack to pass this around. As a result of the algorithm error, we are receiving an additional $338,000 over what we previously thought that we would be receiving. It's an increase of $473,000 and change from this year's budget, last year's budget, as I like to call it. So it is great news. So as a result, the increase to the 4 communities is a little over 1.7 million. And you see the percentage to each of the 4 towns.
So it's half of where we were when we started. So progress is being made.
Progress,
We're
yep.
excited.
It's being handed to us. That's perfect.
So one of the things that do we want to talk any more about that, or do you want me to go into the rest of the handouts, Pat?
I guess I would see if there were questions from board members.
I will make the new ED279 available for board members to look at if they wish to do so. But I was trying to prepare updated reports, so.
Oh, thank you.
Here's that top, and then the rest, yeah.
Any questions so far?
Exciting.
Very exciting. So the last meeting, we talked about valuation. So in your packet, you have a form or a document that says know your value. Valuation makes a difference. So I took on this sheet, this is the communities that Pat compared us against as far as expenditures. And I wanted you to see how we compared against those communities as far as state valuation. So if you remember, state valuation is how our towns go about raising revenue. So the higher the valuation is, the easier it is for them to raise revenue. So on this sheet, I have sorted it by valuation by municipality. This is state valuation. This is not local valuation. So you can see we fall in the middle of the pack at $950 million. If, however, you divide the valuation by per pupil, you will see that we are one of the lowest. So our ability to raise revenue based on a per pupil base is less than some of the other municipalities. And that's based on two things, obviously their valuation and their per pupil enrollment. So as we compare ourselves to these other communities, it's just good to just keep that in mind. So the first packet, any questions about the valuation sheet, the state valuation sheet that and I just wanted to share with you, at the bottom of that, you'll see the valuation of the 4 communities for 2022. It is not the same as the valuation that you see in the chart, and that's because the valuation that the state uses for the ED 279 is a 3-year average, or last year's the lesser of the two. I think it's lesser. So for the purpose of our ED 279, the state is using a valuation average over 3 years. But I wanted you to see what it was. Questions? So the last document that I provided was, I created a document in your original packet called Tax Talk. It's orange. We don't want to use that one. You actually want to use the one on the back of the new worksheet that I just handed out.
Pretty colored one.
It's a green and purple one.
Oh, look at that. Oh, nice. I want you to know that we're going to talk about mill rates and valuations, but I want you to know this is a very simplified view of it. I have taken information off each of the 4 communities' tax rate calculation form for 2022, which is the most recent information that's available, the most recent valuation. And I have made changes according to our budget so that we can estimate the amount that we're going to pass along based on the increase that we're looking at as of this evening. So on each of the tax commitment forms that was given to us by the towns, you'll see, well, let me take this back. In the first part of this worksheet, in the first section of the graph, you will see tax for commitment. If you think of it as your personal budget, these are all of the bills for the town. It also includes the school district's assessment to the town, the bill that we send to the town. So if each of our towns and the city of Gardner added up all of their bills for the year, this is the amount that they say that they're obligated for. I would just, yes, because when the town gives us theirs, it includes the county. It includes everybody, okay?
The next section over is the taxable valuation. This is the local taxable valuation, which is different than the state valuation that we just looked at. And if you remember from previous conversations, the difference between the state valuation and the local valuation is the state tries to be the great equalizer, everybody does their valuations differently, and the state tries to make it equitable amongst all the communities in the state. So there's the difference between the state but for the purpose of creating the local mill rate, they use the local valuation. So it's a pretty simple calculation. If you divide the tax commitment by the valuation, the taxable valuation, you get the mill rate. So in this document, you'll see that the mill rate for the city of Gardner is 0.022200, or restated as 22.2. We usually talk about mill rates like that. You can see what the mill rate is for each of our 4 communities as for 2022. So Gardner, 2220, Pittston, 1375, Randolph is 18, West Gardner is 8.3. So I wanted to show you what percentage and what amount of that mill rate belongs to or is attributed to education. So in the next section, the light blue section, we see the assessment that we sent for these communities for last year. And this includes the adult ed assessment. So for the purpose of this exercise, I'm assuming that adult ed will remain the same for next year. I think that's safe to say, but we haven't completely finished that budget yet. So I did the same thing as above. So that's the amount that we passed to each of the communities. I divided it by the taxable valuation, and then you get the mill rate, what I call the mill rate for education. So you can see for the town, or the city of Gardner rather, the mill rate for education is 10.85. And if you look at the percentage, that is 49% of the overall mill rate of 22.20. So for Pittston, we are 83% of their tax bill. For Randolph, we're 60%, and for West Gardner, we're 92%. That's the amount that's raised that comes back to us. So based on this, I updated the next section to include the figures that we just looked at off the new worksheet. So if we increase each of the towns by the amount on the worksheet on the back side, you will see the effect that you will have on the mill rate. So if you increased Gardner's, the amount that we send to Gardner or assess Gardner by 628,000 and change, it will have an increase of 1.67 on the mill rate. Pittston would be 1.81, Randolph 1.85, West Gardner 1.22. So the next section is, well, what does this mean to average taxpayers? So I have updated this from what I've done in the past. Usually we do 100, 200, and 300,000, but since the state average home valuation is 250,000, I decided that I would make that the median. So based on the proposed increase in the worksheet, we would see an increase of $250 and change for a home in Gardner over their current year bill. Now, I just want to be clear, this does not include any increases passed along by the town, city, county, or anybody else. This is just what we would pass along additional. So for a $250,000 property, it would be $418.17. And for a $350,000 property, it would be $585.44. And you can see how it affects each of our other communities.
And just to add another lens to this, if you were to take the $250,000 property in Gardner and you broke that down per month, it's shy of $35 a month is what that works out to be.
And this is based on this sheet that you have the million on, right? Is that what that is? Or the whole-
Based on this with the additional subsidy. Yep.
Thank you.
So there are still things that we are expecting to come in. Health insurance, we will have our rates by April 7th. On Thursday, we have the bus bid, which we expect to be a huge expense, and we're hoping that that is favorable. What else did we discuss?
I'm doing behind the scenes a couple of conversations with associations regarding some other possible changes, but not ready to share that publicly yet.
I think those are the big items. I think we couldn't think of anything else.
We also, every year, this time of year, remember we are looking at, or I would say Mr. Kempton in the high school, they're looking at signups, course signups. And so Chad is in the middle of that work right now. We've begun having conversations and we'll decide if there's any movement as a result of that. We don't know yet.
We still have not had a conversation with Angela about Title I and Title II. Things have been crazy upstairs. So we'll need to see whether or not we'll need to move some personnel into the budget.
And the title money, the amount that school districts are going to receive will not be released until April 11th. So that puts us at a disadvantage.
Isn't that late?
We never have it. We never have it early. Sometimes we actually receive it after the budget's
I was
been
gonna
approved.
say.
Oh, that's
So-
right. I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that presents a challenge for us.
I don't know if at the last meeting we said we didn't need to move any of the local entitlement personnel in.
Correct, we
That
do.
we decided that, we figured out that we'd be able to squeak through probably our last year.
Utilities are gonna remain.
Yep, so I read another article in the paper which really had me alarmed about guidance, and I just wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing. And based on conversations that I'm having with competitive energy services, I'm confident that we need to leave our natural gas is very volatile right now. We had a month or two that for the high school alone, we were paying $27,000 worth of natural gas. And there's still things in the pipeline, both Summit Natural Gas and the gas company that provides gas to the city of Augusta are both having to the PUC for an increase in the distribution. So like I said, like our electricity bills, there's two pieces, supply and distribution. We're waiting to see how that pans out. And natural gas, to give you some idea, I don't know if it was Gabe and I or someone else and I in my office, we were looking at last year. I think last year at the high school, we were paying less than $1 a gallon for natural gas. And now, I mean,
It was about 11,000 for the month of February versus 27,000 for this year's. So it wasn't just pennies increase from last year or tens of cents, it was dollars increase from last year per they calculate it by therm, so it's done differently than most people are used to buying either their oil or propane. So the conversion's a little different. But converting the numbers, it's quite a bit more than what we're paying now for propane.
and I wanted, And I wanted you to know that Gabe and I have had conversations. I've had conversations with Charlie about switching over. The problem is we have no place for storage. We would need to have huge storage tanks. Gabe said we might be able to eke by at LER, was it LER?
Yeah, LER, we could probably figure out a location to put, it's a smaller school, so we don't need to store as much on site. Where the high school uses so much in a week's time, and same at the middle school. If you get more than 4 tanks at a facility, it's called a tank farm. There's a lot of permitting. And the other piece is storing, 4 tanks, that's 4,000 gallons of propane you're storing on site in close proximity to a school. So just that little piece right there. And the cost is just astronomical for permitting and the cost of infrastructure to be able to put on site and the repiping. To regain the cost of that is going to be quite an extended period of time.
We don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face, but Gabe and I are talking about perhaps engaging in conversation with Charlie and with, I don't remember the name of the company that, to look to see if there's something that can be done with heat pumps and something that, if this is going to be the way of natural gas, I mean, supposedly piped in gas is supposed to be your cheapest commodity, but if it continues, I think we need to explore other options, including heat pumps through our building. So we're going to get together and have a conversation to see how feasible it is. Again, we certainly don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said about exploring other options.
And then once everybody switches to heat pumps, that'll go up. That'll be the.
Well, and Maine doesn't have as much natural gas infrastructure, even southern New
No.
England, it's everywhere. So, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So the problem, if you remember, we only have access to one supplier. We have access
Right.
to Summit, and the
That's it.
people in Augusta have access to natural.
Augusta Natural Gas.
Maine
And
natural
Maine
gas,
Maine
thank
Natural
you.
Gas, you're right. Yep.
And the two do not service the same areas.
Oh, so do not
So-
commingle.
No, they do not.
I was so excited. I called you. I received an email that said our natural gas was going from $2.29 per therm down to 64.7 cents per therm. And I thought, oh my gosh, my gas bill is gonna, nope. So I called Andrea to say, I just got great news. This is gonna help us. And she said, no, it's the standard delivery charge that's gonna go up. And sure enough, that's absolutely right. And they get to visit that twice a year, apparently. And yeah. Yep, so no good news.
Just had this like mental image of many coat stoves in each.
Right.
Which is at least a renewable main resource.
As
There you
long as
go.
I'm not the one shoveling them in, I'm all good.
We can make PE into pellet
We
shovels.
did look at that. We did look at that
Resourceful.
probably 10 years ago now. We looked at doing pellet
remember that.
boilers at each of the building.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Becky was here. I'm sure you remember
Yep,
that.
I remember
I
that.
wasn't thinking about the boilers, I was thinking individual pellet stoves in the classroom.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
We look like prairie people. Not that that's a bad thing.
So here's hoping that our natural gas situation gets settled sooner rather than later. For
Yeah.
the sake of our electricity bills and for the sake of our natural gas.
So that's still in the air. Oh, yes, go ahead, Jim. No, you're fine.
What justification do they use for the delivery costs going up? So the infrastructure is existing.
Mhm.
Where does the increase in cost come that would warrant them going to the PUC and asking for a major increase?
They are both out there with their hand out. I know that Summit expected to have many more customers than it currently has. So it took on, they have a lot of overhead that they're trying to recoup. And the only way that they can recoup it is based on its existing customers. So I don't know what, I would assume that Maine Natural Gas would probably, would be similar. That they need to fix their infrastructure or expand their infrastructure. So that seems to be the way when CMP goes up and asks for additional money for distribution. So similar.
The next session's in 2 days, Jim, you can listen.
You should go, I'd like to hear what they say.
Yeah.
Questions about anything that I've said?
I'm happy for the good news of the extra money and the algorithm that made a mess. That's really great news. Very helpful for us.
Just because I haven't been here, and I'm over here because I've been away, now I'm back, because I wanted to come back for the fun. How are we feeling about the special purpose, private school tuition and special ed numbers?
Well, we're feeling a lot better than the first time we looked at them.
Okay, that's fair.
Because the first time we looked at the increase in special ed, we were looking at $1 million increase. And so Andrea, Alicia, and I spent a lot of time really looking at these. And Alicia went back, worked with Sarah. I believe we reduced 7 slots, keeping in mind that we have a reserve account for special ed that is designated specifically for some unanticipated needs, and that's 400,000 that we have in that account, correct? 300,000.
Okay,
So the only bad thing about using the reserve account is it doesn't go into our funding formula for next year. I would, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I would suggest to the board that maybe we discuss creating a warrant that allows for replenishing that reserve account once we reach our carryover amount, so that we're not dipping from carryover. Because the problem is, if Alicia fills all those slots next year and I am and we are accessing that reserve account, we're going to be that much further in the whole the following year, provided all those students go out. So I think it's worth discussing creating a warrant article that would allow us to sweep funds over 1.4 million, but not more than, into that reserve account for special ed purposes. I think that would be wise.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Andrea? It's really helpful.
I want you to know that it's really simplified and dumbed down. There's a lot of other things that, I don't mean to, the page, there's a lot of more documents to it, including the homestead exemption.
Right,
There's a lot of
sure,
things that go into it. So it's on its simplest terms. So
That's what we need. So thank you. And I think that's probably what our community needs, because school funding is so complicated. So as much as we can do to make it simple for us and then simple for them, that's really good. Yes, Diane, and then Jim.
I remember at the middle school, I believe we're down a math coach, yes, sorry, thank you. And is that in the budget anyhow, because we haven't found anyone?
That was not added to the budget. I'm hoping to have approximately $50,000 to $70,000 to set aside in ARP funds. That's what we had this year, so that we can contract out for some of those services. But given the status of the budget, we didn't feel that we could add any coaching positions. I mean, we added 2 nurses, right? We have the additional nurse over at LER, so that every single school has their own individual nurse. Then we have an incoming student that's going to require a one-on-one nurse, so there are 2 nurses. We hired the business generalist. We need someone in the central office. We've talked about that. And then we have in here an EdTech, a librarian EdTech 3 position, so that every elementary school will have their own librarian and they're not sharing. Part of that is in response to the elimination of the elementary school counseling positions. As a result of those being eliminated, we lost a prep time for some of our teachers. And so by building back in the librarian, the EdTech librarian, it will help build back some of the prep time for our staff. So we felt like that is the least impactful or the least expensive option, and it's a really great option to be able to focus on literacy and be a support system to our staff in every single building. But we didn't feel, given where we were, that we could add any other positions at this time. We certainly would like to.
Yeah.
We'd love to add another math coach. They need it at the middle school. And I guess I would say as a reminder, one of the things I'm hoping to do in the next week or two is to update our ARP grant, okay? So our American Rescue Plan. That is a grant that's going to end in 2025. So that grant has funded some teaching positions to lower class sizes. Remember, there were some social studies positions at the middle school. There was a math position at the high school. There's an elementary position, but it also provided social workers. So we have an elementary social worker. So we have one in each building. We have another social worker that is 6 through 12.
The other half, Nicole's.
The other half of Nicole,
Yep.
instructional, right, and instructional coach. But there's another position, and I can't think of what that is. And so as we think about the amount of money that's left, we are not going to be able to fund the math position or the social studies positions. But I really want to focus on the social workers and maintaining those positions given where the needs are of our students. Some coaching, I have included the instructional coach position for Nicole, that's in there, like I said, the $70,000. And we do have a need at one of the elementary schools to maintain one of those class size reduction teachers, because if we don't, we will have class sizes of 24 in a particular grade. And given the needs that we're seeing of our students, that's just not workable for our teachers or our students or our administration. So that will be the focus and the emphasis of getting us through that last year of the grant. So next year, when we're sitting at this table, right? Yeah, Jim's like, I won't be here, I'll have to deal with this. We will be having this very conversation, Diane. What do we do? How do we fund those social worker positions? How do we fund any of those coaching positions that are not currently in the budget?
You know, one of the things that won't change the money at the end of the day, but one of the things that we found helpful when negotiating with teachers was years ago was to just continue to talk about it through the year. And maybe that's something that we should be talking about regularly so that our families that are listening and our constituents that listen keep up with it. So it's not a surprise when it comes, if we can just continue to have the conversation publicly.
Yeah, true. And the other thing that we will need to begin discussing, that is the outcome of our sense making, right? Our strategic planning. Once that report is pulled together and we have recommendations, it would be my expectation that we talk about those expectations, and those should be the driving force for your goals for the future and for your budget development.
Correct.
Chris?
We're talking about positions. Are there any positions that we haven't filled? When I say haven't filled, that we, like 6 months, a year, that we're budgeting for and requiring in our budget, but we just can't fill them?
The only positions that we haven't filled are in special ed. Right now, Alicia and Sarah Boldick, the assistant special ed director, are looking at what the needs are for special ed across the district, are seeking some input, feedback from administration and staff, and trying to come up with a plan, given the positions that are currently in the budget, to decide the best approach forward. I don't envision, Chris, us being able to eliminate any of those positions. It's possible that maybe they'll get redirected to where there's a greater need potentially.
Right.
We spoke about some unfilled EdTech positions, but we, through the budget process last year, if you recall, eliminated 4 unfilled EdTech positions. And while they're not currently filled, they're needed. We have, our staff are just stretched. And so hopefully another school year, it will look different. The landscape will look a little bit different in terms of our ability to hire members to our team. So hopefully those will be filled.
Jim,
With the DD 214, is that it?
279.
279.
79, whatever. Anyway, we, according to the state, we are heavy on, we have too many teachers for the number of students we have, and that affects us in a contrary manner. Those teachers that we've been paying with the grant money, are they figured in that calculation, or are they a separate entity? And do we get penalized for having those teachers?
They are not figured in that calculation.
They are not, okay. So when we, if whatever happens with them in 2 years or a year, it could have, even if we decide to pull them in, we could be talking about a major hit on our DD whatever.
ED 279.
I'll never get it, I'm not gonna worry about it.
So Jim,
Yes,
some of this could be eased with one elementary school. Just saying.
I don't care, I'm leaving.
I know, but I just want to say,
I will
because
be-
the
I
ED
will be in the
279,
ground before you get that thing built.
you're dying?
Nope. You ain't gonna get it done for a long time.
Well, I have no idea, Jim, but it would certainly alleviate, it would open up space in the ED 279, because part of what we get dinged for is the number of buildings that we support.
And the duplication of services, so.
I understand your thoughts, and there's
I'm
probably
gonna change
lots
my
of,
mind, but that's okay.
yeah, it's fine, it's fine,
Somebody
but
else
it's,
will be here, sitting right here, so.
yeah, they will, yeah.
I'm just happy that
Maybe
Becky
they'll-
mentioned it
I'm sure
before I did.
I'm sure they won't have your charm and your rugged jawline, but we'll work with them, whoever they are.
You got a nice haircut though.
I noticed, and I was going to mention it. Yes, Diane.
3 weeks ago or whatever, we were talking about how to convince people, that our budget is the way it is and we need to pass it because by telling them and using media, using different efforts to really get it out there and what we're lacking and what we want to do, and is that still part of the mix?
It's part of the continuing conversation, and we actually had an offer from our teachers who would really like to be a part of that, because they wholeheartedly, we have just a wonderful way of negotiating with our teachers in that we don't use any sort of legal representation or association representation. We just sit with them and collaboratively work together. And so at the end of it all, the feeling from the teachers was, let us help you. Let us help you. And so, yes, it is part of the conversation happening. Yeah.
Because I thought if we get good at that, then at some point, that single elementary school, we might use similar things.
Oh, yes, you can just drop those seeds. Yeah. Subliminal messaging. We can work on that.
And so as we think about the bottom line, and we are at a 7.83% increase. I think that's about where we were last year. We had a 7% increase to the budget,
Yep.
didn't we, Andrea?
5.
5?
6.
Maybe it was, okay.
Gun to your head.
I think I've said publicly before that we really don't have a lot of fluff. We've talked about this. So, we need a little more direction from all of you and where do you want to go with this? And if indeed you want to go lower beyond the things the items that we said we're still waiting for decisions like health insurance and some bus bid and some other factors, then, those areas include foregoing maintenance, potentially, that our maintenance is going up. We're gonna need a $90,000 roof repair to the high school. Maybe you don't do that. If you don't do that, it'll cost more money down the road because of damage. I get that. I'm not supporting that. I'm just saying, what are our options? Our other options truly, and I don't mean this as a threat to get everyone up in arms,
No.
but truly, I can't think of any other option other than to be looking at staffing reductions.
Right.
I just don't know where else to go. And so I want to be really, really clear that that's the next step. And it would be increasing class sizes. And I just need to know if you want administration to do that work. Or do we want to kind of sit tight a little bit longer, see what we find out about health insurance? Hopefully we'll know that next week, right?
April 7th is the date.
So 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we will know.
I was kind of gonna say that, Pat. I'm looking at the increased overview. Salary to salaries, those are all collectively bargains, nothing you can do there. The rest is health insurance, main PERS, all stuff that the numbers are the numbers. Really, it comes down to the positions, which we've talked about a lot and I think they're needed. And then the capital improvement projects. Those are only really the two places we can adjust this.
Correct.
That doesn't leave many options. So what were the main projects that were in there for that 400,000? The roof, you said?
Roof,
There was some paving, right, Gabe?
Doorknob.
some doorknobs in the middle school, those are expensive.
The roof is the main one. One of the other ones, cat floor LER.
Right,
And-
which needs to be done, the tiles are coming up, it's a safety issue for our young,
I know,
our
so
young
we
friends.
pretty much have cut all the main projects. The other ones are very small. We even limited, if we were looking at doing some playground, we had talked about playground expansions. We left in $5,000 for each because I have some paving repairs that have to be done. And it doesn't even include Vicky's repair that we need to do now down there. So that's just gonna have to come out of repairs somewhere. So really, most all of them have been cut except for just little projects. So to get to a big number, you're gonna be pretty much cutting a lot of little projects that we had left in there.
Right, and you had over at Pittston Randolph, remember we did the parking expansion, we need a guardrail on one side, so should someone lose their brakes, accidentally hit the gas or whatever, they would run right into the school.
Yes, right,
So we
so
need a
those are the
guardrail
projects,
there.
there were some that we definitely can't cut.
Yeah.
And those are pretty much the ones we left in there. We cut most all the carpeting out that we had put in there. We left some emergency light replacements that they don't work. We keep replacing batteries over batteries and batteries and batteries, and they're just not working. So, and there again, those are $5,000 projects out of school, so it's tough. There are a lot of small projects that were in there. But really the roof one at the high school, and we even reduced that one. I'm doing a different section than I originally had planned, so we reduced it by 30-ish thousand, I think, somewhere
Your
around there.
largest project is 90,000,
Yeah.
and that's the roof.
Right.
And most of the other big expenditures are PMs, preventive maintenance.
Yeah, we really are. We've pretty much
It's
cut
really
it
nothing.
to nothing already.
Which we're so good at, which is why we're so far down on every list for anything.
Right, and
Magical.
I had mentioned about, again, if anybody drives into the high school or on the student parking lot, there's nothing in budget for paving over there at all.
So just to throw out as an FYI, we learned, maybe 3 weeks ago, we learned that there is sometimes some federal dollars available by our representatives. They might have, I don't remember the amount, they might have $20 million that they can spend on locally funded projects. And I reached out to our representatives down at Representative Golden's office, had an amazing conversation down there, and felt that if we were to submit a proposal that included potentially redesigning the high school bus drop-off, parent drop-off, or repave some of the facilities that we were going to bond, that there might be in a future year, we didn't have enough time to get what we would done, there might be some funding available. Of course, there is no guarantee, no promise. It depends who submits. But given that our facilities are used so extensively by members of the public, especially our basketball courts, so maybe we could throw in the need to replace basketball courts at LER, at Riverview, at wherever else, the middle school maybe, I don't remember where they are.
Helen Thompson.
No, they don't need a
She
new,
had her hand up.
you don't need a new gym floor.
Oh, paving, that's on paving.
Sorry.
You got excited. It's
I had to,
fine.
Katie, I had you.
So now that may be too large of a project, if you wrap all of that together, but there's the possibility that they may fund a good portion of it. If they were, it would be another year out before the funding actually came in.
Yeah.
And we would have to do some design work so that we would be prepared in next March to submit an application. So I thought that was really interesting. I mean, it crossed our desk. The problem is the turnaround is like literally 2 weeks, right? And I became aware of it and we just didn't have enough time to do that legwork. But if you're interested, that may be something that we could pursue and consider. There does have to be some type of contribution usually by the local entity. I don't know what that would mean, but it wouldn't hurt to put in a proposal for $3 million rather than asking taxpayers to go to bid, right? So if you are interested in us pursuing that idea, I'll work with Gabe and we can do some of the design legwork and move forward. And this person that I spoke with, she was so helpful. She actually said that she would come here and look at our facilities and give us some ideas and some suggestions to see whether we really would comply with the guidelines as they exist now, knowing that next year the guidelines could be changed. It is the federal government, so.
They don't change.
So since you asked about the current year budget, the increase to the budget was 5.21% or almost 1.4 million. The increase to the 4 communities was 6% or 615,000.
Different than this time because of the valuation.
Correct.
That's why it's much higher.
Right. Which is out of our control.
The other thing, last year I shared with you just a perspective of how we compare to other school districts like I did this year. I didn't do it to the same degree that I did this year. But last year I compared where we fell. There are 257 school districts, that hasn't changed. And last year there were 43 school districts that spent less per pupil than MSAD11. This year, when I did that same assessment, there were 39 students that spent less than we did. Districts.
Mm-hmm.
So we were actually lower than we were the year before. So
I think that's where the valuation conversation comes
Yeah.
into place.
Yeah.
While we want to try to spend same or similar, it is harder for us or more expensive for our taxpayers to
Right.
try to compete with these other communities who have more valuation than we do.
Right.
Which is why it's, the idea of the community school or a consolidated elementary school makes
a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense. You had your hand up before, I'm sorry, Jack. Yes.
I think we should sit tight. I think we should not try to squeeze any more blood out of the stone and see what the remaining variables come in at and tell our taxpayers that this is desperately needed and it's not something that we can avoid, or punish our schools further by trying to curtail those budgets. I think we should just ask them to pass it.
I second
I
that
agree.
notion.
Take that blessing with the recalculations, the 8279 and run with it.
And do it in a really nice, positive way. Look what you
Because I
get.
think we get too focused on that number. We did that last year and it felt like the wrong move maybe. People were like, oh, the $40, the $35, it's worth it, right? We have a lot of things coming. We have a lot of negotiations. We have a lot of maintenance. It's like we can't cut anymore, to your point. We just have to say it that way. When you were asking about communication, I'm all for letting everyone have the communication out and sharing it, yeah.
And our staff is not overpaid, that's another, you know,
Yeah,
they can go 10 miles away from here and make $8,000 to $15,000 more. And most people don't know that.
Most people on the street aren't gonna know
No, they
that, so
don't
if we
know.
just say, hands are tied, what are we doing? We can't do any more. We're
Right.
really, this is, I think, as low as we can go.
Andrea remembers my first year when I said, well, what happens if the budget doesn't pass? And she sort of gave me a look and I was like, well, then you come back and have to rework it, but we should have all the information. So that's like part of it, right?
And you rework it and it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily change. I mean, we have what we have.
I don't think we need to be looking at any staff reductions. I don't think we need to calculate for that.
I agree.
No.
Yeah.
That's possible, unless we get our back up against the wall. We are lean, we are not overstaffed. We're producing a good product and that we're graduating good students. So I am opposed to that at this point. Yeah. If the world comes to an end tomorrow, we'll look at what we have to look at, but I don't think we need to do it today.
Does it make sense that we pause next meeting and wait till health insurance and the bus bids are in? I mean, we can certainly meet and discuss some more, but if we're waiting for figures, then.
Right.
No, I think we take a week off and wait till we get more information. The listeners and watchers will just get frustrated if we sit here
And do the same thing and spend our time and talk around and around and nothing changes.
Right.
Yeah.
I will make sure that I share the information that I've shared with you online
Perfect.
so that others can see.
Thank you.
And I guess I would say that we'll plan to take next Tuesday off. However, if we are surprised and the health insurance rates come in this week versus the 7th when we anticipate, and we feel like we have the information, then maybe we will still meet. So if you just want to hold on to it tentatively, but it's not looking that way, but
If we don't have both of those, what's the sense in doing?
that's what I mean. If it
Right.
comes in
Yep.
early,
I'm talking about both the bus and the, okay,
correct, because the bus is this week.
okay. I thought.
Yeah.
So her letter, her email today, when she sent us the high, it said the 7th, and it could be that it comes in. So
But if not, we won't be next week.
Yep. We won't meet for one thing. We'll just
And you already have a board meeting next Wednesday, and I'm going to schedule a special board meeting on Wednesday. You'll have the regular board meeting on Thursday, and then you have the play that you wanna go to Thursday night,
Another field trip.
so.
So a break from finance wouldn't be
So I'm gonna have a
bad thing.
special
Yeah.
meeting, I don't think you were in
You
the
weren't in the
room at
room.
the time. And everyone asked for that at 5. I know that that's a challenge for your schedule. Other
Yeah.
people needed to leave early, so I could get more people at 5 than at 5:30. So
What did you say about Thursday, Pat?
Thursday, you'll have a board meeting. It's gonna be in this room at 5:00.
Okay.
We'll end by 6:30 so that you can all leave and get up to the high school.
I gotta work that night too over there, so that's why I'm asking.
The sound was so poor
Oh, over there?
when it was in the library that
Okay.
if you're going to live stream, and we want members of the public to be able to hear and engage with you, then we can't have the meeting there. That's just unfair. They couldn't hear anything if they tried to listen. So we'll have it here, but then give you ample time so that you can head over. Same as last time, if you want to go to the play, email me or tell me how many tickets you want. And I will speak with Mr. Kempton and the high school staff.
Do you want me to do that, Pat? There's an email ticket address if you want me to coordinate it. One
Oh,
less
that
thing
would be
for you
great
to
if
do.
you want to do that. If you could do that,
One less
Alyssa,
thing.
that would be awesome. Thank you.
So we let you
I can
know what we need?
Yeah.
Let
Okay.
Alyssa
Will
know.
we
I
have
just
reserved
updated-
seats, is that, right?
They can, yeah,
That's what we
Yep.
will ask for, yes.
perfect. We
Awesome.
just did the
Okay,
minutes for
so
the
everyone
boosters, so I
email
got it in my
Alyssa
brain.
if you're interested in going. And I hope we all go.
Yeah, should be good.
It's a field trip. Love field trips.
Becky, one question, because I know, again, I came because of relevance and just wanting to, curiosity of where we were landing. Do we feel like, and Pat, are there any things that we took out that we shouldn't have or any of that? Like if people start asking, I know positions is hard, right? But when I hear Gabe list off the things he has and then new things happen or is it fair to say to administrators and staff again, gosh, if there's one thing that you wish or something, you know, I know they're good about talking to you, but we also tell them to cut things out.
Right.
So I just sort of open that, like if there's something we should absolutely consider that we took out for some reason, just.
Well, we are lean
Yeah.
with the maintenance, so if you wanted to add money back in to do more of the maintenance, the LER, Pittston Randolph, and I don't remember Helen Thompson, I think Helen Thompson, there was some more playground equipment,
Yeah.
trying to expand that a little bit. I think people would appreciate if there were extra money of being able to move forward with those projects. We didn't cut any positions, correct? If you wanted to get a jump start on a math coach and throw that in.
Right.
But again, these are all new
I know.
positions, I'm not,
I think you're making a mistake. Keep
Yeah.
adding these things in.
yeah,
you know.
and I'm not recommending that, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
respond to the
True.
question.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I just
Not
think,
the time.
and that's why I appreciate Andrew, when you say about reserve funds and making sure we trickle back in and trying to do.
My concern is the community with the most taxpayers
Right.
has the other 50% of their budget is the
Correct.
city, and we don't
We
know.
don't control that,
They are
right?
experiencing the same issues that we
Yeah,
are with
that's
fuel, with staff, and I just think we need to be mindful.
Right.
That's fair.
As we struggle with and grapple with low salaries, I know the city is grappling with exactly the same
Yeah,
issue.
that makes sense.
And they can't hire people either.
Right,
So they're
right,
having the same.
Public services.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, it's not part of this budget, I guess, but I know we're being helped by the state with the high school cafeteria floor because it has asbestos. When is that, another year or something?
No, that's gonna happen over the summer.
Yeah, so we're in the process right now of getting the request for quote put together. So that way that can be sent out. The hope is that it would be, well, it will be done this summer.
Right.
We're gonna put it that way.
Good job.
So we're going to create, or we're going to ask the board to create a warrant article that will allow us to spend those funds next year rather than try to hurry to get the project done before June 30th. So that will be
Yeah.
another warrant article
That
that.
makes sense.
Well, if there's nothing else, our next finance committee meeting will be on the 11th of April. And we should have all of our ducks in a line by then, and if not, we'll realign them. Thank you all. Sitting against the wall and being here. Get out while it's still light.
Just for moments.